Welcome to the Life and Leadership Podcast, where we discuss business, leadership, and friendship. I'm Zach Goebel.
And I'm Jared Totsch. Thank you for joining us today.
All right. Welcome, everyone, to our podcast. And we are glad that you are with us. Jared, how are you today?
You know what? I'm pretty good. I've got a little cold going on, so I sound a little extra nasally. You know, I'm always nasally, but I sound a little extra nasally today, so I'm good.
Yeah, I talked to him on the phone yesterday. He was out of town, and I could tell he had a cold, and I said, you better get rid of that very quickly because we are recording a podcast.
Oh, I'm medicated up, drinks. I don't have tissues.
An interesting podcast.
I do have tissues somewhere, and I have hand sanitizer. Like, I have all kinds of stuff that I might need during this podcast. So, I don't know.
There's no telling. Well, welcome everyone to our podcast, and I want to start out by saying thank you to those of you that have subscribed and shared our podcast.
Thousands.
Thousands.
I know.
We're basically famous.
We are. We're going to be at the YouTube Awards next. Yeah.
But no, we really do appreciate it.
No, we really are. I'm just kidding.
We appreciate it. It does help us. And the thing is, we're going to do this no matter what.
All 5 subscribers.
Yeah. We're going to do it no matter what because we enjoy it. And and we do hear positive things about it. And so hopefully it's helping some of you. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe or follow or whatever. You know, we're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, we're on YouTube. Subscribe or follow wherever you are and share it. If you think it is a helpful podcast, and share it with someone you think it may help. So,
or if you just want to make fun of us and be like, can you believe these goofballs? Like, still subscribe.
Yeah. So, Jared,
it works.
What is the topic today? What are we going to be talking about?
So we kind of talked about, we wanted to dive into a little bit about friendships, and from just surviving, friendships to thriving. Yeah, from surviving to thriving. And I know that's kind of a pretty popular phrase or term to use in all kinds of leadership realms, but I think it applies a lot in relationships and friendships.
Yeah.
From surviving to thriving.
Yeah. So go ahead, start us off.
Yeah. So I would say, when you think about surviving, what do you think about when you think about surviving something? Like, you hear a phrase, boy, I survived today.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Yeah.
What does that, or what emotions does that evoke in you? What does that bring up in you?
You know, I don't watch TV, but I know for a fact
it's a shame.
There was a show or whatever it was called Survivor. And that whenever you said surviving, that was the first thing that came to my mind was the people like on a deserted island, foraging for food and trying their best, whatever they do on that.
Yeah.
But that is whenever the first thing that popped in my mind whenever you said surviving is at the point of death, doing whatever you can.
So I have a very serious question.
Yeah.
Are you just surviving our friendship, or?
So to the next topic.
No, and I think that's the key. Like, so if you think about the word surviving, I survived the day. You're going through a lot of stressful times, and you just made it to the end of the day. I saw for a lot of educators around spring break, we're surviving this last week. We've got 7 more weeks of school. I think it's 6 now. That's what I've heard from a lot of educators around here. 7 more weeks of school. There are those aspects and components of surviving, but what does it mean to then thrive, right? Because reality is sometimes friendships are hard. Like they can be challenging. And I would say it is very easy to find yourself surviving without realizing you're just surviving a relationship. Because maybe you've done this so long. You've been friends for 15 years, so it's just what we do, right? Is be friends. You hang out on a certain night of the week. That's just what we do, right? So it becomes kind of just like the ordinary.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe this should be from ordinary to extraordinary. Like,
There we go.
I don't know.
Good title.
Yeah, I don't know, but like, so it becomes very ordinary or just common and not something that you've really are putting a lot of heart and thought and soul into.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't.
Well, so one of the things that popped in my mind whenever you were talking about that, about getting into
I had to chug some caffeine.
getting into a rut or a routine, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest, I've been married. We've been Amanda and I've been married 13 years.
Uh-oh.
Yes, this will be our 14th in September. So we've been married 13 years, and we've talked about that, and we've heard people talk about that as well, that sometimes you just need to get out of your rut and routine and, go to, we used to have Steak and Shake around here. I think they're all closed down now, but go to Steak and Shake at 1 o'clock in the morning, find a babysitter for your kids and go do something crazy.
Find Jared.
No,
I'm just kidding.
Hire Jared, 30 cents on the hour. And get out of a rut and routine, feel young again, and just get the rust off of the relationship. And we've done that before, and just done something sporadic and wild just to, get rid of the rust,
Right.
and it works.
Yeah.
And I think that would apply in a friendship as well. We like to entertain. We like to have people over to our house. Most time either on Friday night or Saturday night, but maybe sometime we just need to change it up and do something completely different.
Yeah, like disinvite people.
Disinvite people.
Like you just sending you a message letting you know you are not invited to us tonight.
We're trying to change things up.
Changing things up. We just want to let people know that you are no longer invited to your house. No, so you made me think of something. So some people had asked for stories about our world and life. So I think of some really like funny times in our history. And
does that have anything to do with purple elephants?
No. Yeah, so those are late nights. So towards the beginning of our friendship, all those things. So I'm thinking of the ferret story at Granny's. Like that's the priceless story that just keeps reliving and reliving. And so we are in the basement of Granny's house, and Granny is Amanda's, Zach's wife's grandmother, who has passed. So we're in the basement and we're staying there, and I'm really like condensing this story down a lot, but her husband, Grandpa, had a ferret, a pet ferret, and it escaped his bedroom. And here we are in front of this fireplace on these air mattresses, sleeping, sawing logs, just all this wonderful time. And I'm laying there sound asleep, and all of a sudden I feel this fuzzy thing fall across me. It scared the snot out of me. So I pick it up, and who do I put it on? Like, I don't just toss it anywhere. Like,
of course.
I placed it over on Zach. Like, I mean, I'm like, I don't want this ferret, what nothing to do with this ferret, right?
Just to clarify, we were on separate air mattresses.
I don't think really anybody cares. Okay, so I tossed the ferret onto Zach, and he wakes up and he's like, "Oh my word," whatever. And I don't remember. I think it was me. Like I don't remember what ensued from then on, but all I know is I eventually took that ferret and took it upstairs. And I put it in the wrong bedroom. I put it in Granny's bedroom. And I did not know that Granny was deathly afraid. And
I think it was on purpose.
And hated the ferrets. And I didn't realize which room Granny was staying in. And Grandpa had his own space and room. And so I threw the ferret in Granny's room and shut the door. But we have laughed about that story for years.
Well, and Granny's scream.
Oh yeah,
one of a kind.
Is a one of a kind. And so imagine finding a ferret that you are deathly afraid of. And I don't think that I ever fessed up to putting it. Did I? I fessed up to putting it in her room.
You're still alive, so
I guess
probably
I didn't.
not.
I didn't. But so that was so if you think about it in friendship, like that's a hilarious moment, a funny moment, like a really like a joyful moment in friendship, right? And that just kind of happened out of random. It wasn't necessarily intentional or anything like that, but it happened out of random. But friendships don't always live on those moments.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you have these moments where you have great memories, lots of fun, all that kind of stuff, but you don't live in those spaces, right? So sometimes there's just the day-to-day life and the work and all of that you do encounter, and you can't always live in the fun moments, and reality sets in. I remember when I took the job that I currently have now, I debated immensely whether I take this job or not, simply from the fact that I wouldn't get to spend time with you all. I wouldn't get to spend time with my niece, my family, but then you all, like as my friends. Like I went back and forth because I was worried about that. Like I was very worried. And even though like most of the time I'm home on weekends, which is when we would typically spend our time together, like that was a deciding factor, because you do know like people mean a lot to you.
Well, and so just looking at the last couple of weeks, my schedule has been very busy, and your schedule has been very busy with travel, and so the last couple of weeks have just proven exactly that there are moments, there are times or seasons that you go through in a friendship that are not the fun times. You know, we are recording this on the 12th, and we release this on the 15th. Normally we have this recorded 2 weeks in advance.
Right, but our schedules
just haven't, and we had to make this slot of time work here. So with that being said, there's also been a lack of the fun hangout times in the last several weeks.
Agreed.
Because of schedules and things. Because Jared's always traveling.
Really?
No, it's
just me.
It's both of us. And I think we actually alluded to this in the first episode about how it takes hard work in anything. And just to reiterate that, it takes work. Like we have to make things like this happen. We have to make not just the podcast, but whenever we are trying to get together to play games or go out to eat or whatever it may be, we have to make it happen. And so it does take work. It does take effort.
So I was sitting here. So if we could tell people who are listening, what are the keys? What do you feel like the keys are to a thriving friendship? What would you say is the important? So you alluded to this in the beginning, talked about like, you know, changing things up a little bit, right? And like, so what are some keys to keeping a friendship from just dying out or fizzling out or just surviving, but not really thriving?
The first one, the main key, it's selflessness, not being selfish, and putting relationships, friendships first, above your wants, above your desires, above your needs. And I guess, is it okay to say that you have like friendships? You know, you have kind of arm's length friends, and then you have close friends. And if you are going to have close friends, you have to have that selflessness. If you're going to have a marriage that works, you have to have that selflessness.
I'm not married.
So does that make sense?
No, absolutely.
So there are fringe friends, I guess, if we could say it like that, that, you know, you may have over every now and then. You may play games with, hang out, go to, you know, out to eat, whatever, on a not so frequent basis. And then you have close friends, ones that you are comfortable with calling and saying, I've had a horrible day. I need you to pray. I need you to help me, whatever. I think there's a difference in there. Without trying to offend people, I think we can differentiate that. And so if you are going to have a close friend, one that you can call and say, I'm having a horrible day. I just need your support. I just need to talk to you, whatever. If you're going to have those close friendships, people that you can trust, then there has to be selflessness.
And that truly, because in my mind, when you are selfless in a friendship, it keeps it out of the surviving mode, because then there's a reason to be invested, right? Because then all of a sudden your perspective of that person is elevated, right? Because then you've kind of died to self some and you've elevated them in your mind. And that changes the dynamics from surviving to thriving, because when you are selfless towards another person, that person typically feels it. They know it, right? And so then there becomes this bond over this part that they know, right? And so then it solidifies the relationship. So I think honesty in these are key to thriving friendships. Friendships that are just surviving are, if you're just surviving in a friendship, then you're not going to be necessarily honest. It's not that you're going to be dishonest, but you're just not going to be transparent. You could be going.
When someone asks you how you're doing, you're going to say fine, no matter what.
Yep. You're just going to be like, okay, I'm doing great, thumbs up, all that kind of stuff. And that's a surviving friendship. Like, you're just surviving. Like, you're not going to truly say, but if that friendship's thriving, right? I think that honesty, I think the communication piece in the good and the bad times. So if you are just communicating in bad times, first off, that's an imbalance, right? And so then it's probably a negative friendship. Because if it's just a friendship that communicates in the negative times, then that's, obviously you're not really even surviving. It's kind of a drag. It's a downhill. So then that honesty with each other, I think that's key. Like, you're sharing the ups and the downs and sharing the joys of life, and the sorrows, right? And that means that your friendship is thriving. I think another key is, I said communication, and I think in communication, and you had mentioned this before this podcast started and we were talking about it, is the willingness to confront or be in conflict in a good way, right? Not in a screaming, yelling, fighting match, right? But to be able to be in conflict and, know that there may be hurt feelings or emotions, strong emotions, right? There could be or there could not be, it could be just a minor thing, but knowing that there could be some strong emotions, strong feelings, but also knowing that when you are strongly connected to somebody, then that means that there's going to be more intense emotions. Because if you weren't connected to that person, then there wouldn't be strong emotions. And I think being able, though, to have those confrontations in positive ways, be able to say how you really feel. It kind of goes back to that communication piece. Being able to say how you really feel is important, because then your friendship grows and becomes stronger. And obviously, like, these are keys not just for friendships, honestly. Like, these are keys that you can take to the workplace, and maybe you might not have this as deep a level of relationship with somebody, but you do have, these are keys that will help you survive and thrive in your work environment.
Sure. Yeah, and with that, Patrick and Johnny with At the Table podcast, they talk a lot about conflict in the workplace and how it's needed, actually. For
discourse
business,
is needed.
Yeah, for business to thrive. And again, like you said, not yelling and screaming, not that type of conflict, but allowing an atmosphere where disagreements are okay. We don't all have to be on the exact same page. You're not going to grow if you're all always on the same page. And so allowing disagreements, whether that be in the workplace or whether it be in a friendship, a relationship, a marriage, whatever it is, if one side is always just giving in to the other and compromising, you're not gaining any ground, you're not growing. But if you can have that conflict and have a resolution with that conflict and come to a resolution that satisfies the needs of each party, then that is a successful argument. And I remember, when I don't remember if it was high school, but whenever I was younger, I remember being taught the true definition of an argument, because we, as a child, always thought an argument was something that was bad. You don't argue, you don't. Of course,
discourse.
Yeah. So probably shouldn't argue with your parents either, but anyway. So that's probably where I learned that. But an argument is not necessarily a bad thing. In fact, I'd say most of the time it's a good thing to have an argument in a relationship. And we've had, Jared, plenty of arguments, plenty of disagreements. And I would say that through those, not only have we grown in our friendship, but we've grown, when we're arguing about our different ideas or point of views, perspectives of workplace or of even politics. Sometimes we don't talk about that on the podcast, but if we've talked about, when we've talked about that, we are better and more informed because we're willing to have those arguments and those discussions. And not only does it, again, allow us to be more informed of how and why the other party sees it this way, but it allows us to grow in our friendship as well.
And I would say that there has to, interwoven in all of these keys to a thriving friendship would be trust, right? There has to be trust that that person, at the end of the day, that you can trust that person and they have the best, that relationship is truly there with that individual. Because if trust is not there, you can have all kinds of discourse and somebody's going to walk away super mad. And it's not which can happen in a productive, because there are times, that I've walked away from some of our discussions, offended or hurt about something, but not to the point where it's I didn't trust you. I usually, well, obviously I always have come back around, you know what I'm saying? But I think that element of trust has to be there. That's, to me, that's the foundational point, or the foundational piece, because even in the work environment, so that trust, if trust is in the work environment, if trust is in a friendship, then when you have discourse about topics that you are hard things, right? You learn from each other. You can have the discourse. You grow together. You learn about each other. You begin to see other perspectives, and it's a healthy relationship. It's not an argumentative. If it's an argument, if every time you get together you have discourse and you have arguments, it's not a healthy relationship. If you're in the workplace and that's what it is predominantly, is you're constantly butting up with opinions and views and everything in that workplace, somebody's wrong. Somebody's out of, I don't want to say wrong, but somebody's out of order. Somebody's out of sync, because that's not the case that it should be happening. But healthy conflicts do arise in thriving relationships. They do arise because then from those healthy conflicts, you grow and your relationship deepens. You have a better understanding of, if you're in the workplace, the people that you're working with, you have a better understanding of your friend. And or it may just bring something back into clarity that you already knew about your friend. But just you have a new perspective and a new view on that. So I would definitely say that that's key. And you hit on something that I think is imperative. If your friendship or relationship is just surviving, then that means that you haven't had a good discourse and dialogue for a while, probably, right? Because once again, and it doesn't have to be over something like politics. It doesn't even have to be over something that get the emotions involved, stuff like that. It doesn't have to be over that, but just something where you each have a slightly differing perspective and just have a really good, solid conversation about it. And if that doesn't happen, then you know that it's just a surviving friendship. It's just a surviving relationship. If that doesn't happen within the work environment too, then number one, if you are the leader, more than likely you're probably not hearing your people. But if it doesn't have any relationship, then you're not in a friendship, then you're not hearing the other person ever, like hearing their thoughts or opinions. Like you're not ever encountering them. We're not clones.
Yeah. And if you're in a workplace, if you're a leader in a workplace and your team is not comfortable bringing conflict to you, then you've not cultivated an atmosphere in your workplace that allows for growth, not only in your team, but in the company itself. Because if your team's not growing, your company is not going to grow. If your team is too scared to have conflict with their leader and say, hey, I don't agree with this, in a respectful manner, obviously, but I don't agree with this, what about trying this way? Whatever the conflict may be. If the leader hasn't cultivated an atmosphere that allows for that, then you just have a bunch of robots walking around and your team's not going to grow. Your business is not going to grow. On the relationship side, one thing I'm 99% sure it's Dr. John Deloney that says this. Amanda and I talked about this several years ago.
I love his stuff.
He's so good.
Yeah, he is.
Oh my word, he's so good. He says, and you may have heard this. He says that you need to choose who you are going to allow to hurt you, and give them permission. And so, if you're in a marriage, obviously, you go to your spouse and you tell them, I am giving you permission to hurt me, to my heart, essentially. And you only do that with the closest people to you, the ones that you trust, the ones that you know are not going to hurt you intentionally, the ones that you know have your best interest in mind. And those few, 1, 2, 3, however many, it's not many. Those few are the only ones that you allow into that.
And just to clarify, you're not, I don't think he was saying like you let people in your lives that just are out to hurt you, right?
Exactly.
And just hurting you, but you let people remain in your lives who may hurt you, but not maliciously and not intentionally, right? Because from those elements, because there is a level of trust and a level of, and I'm going to use this word, but it's not, don't go down like, don't think of just like a married couple, right? But there's this level of intimacy between friends when there's a level of like, I don't know, like rubbing the cat's fur the wrong way, right? And you allow somebody to do that because then it like kind of prickles you, ruffles your feathers a little bit. But there's only certain people like that you allow that to, because like if I go to Joe Blow down the street who does it all the time, I'm like, I'm not visiting that place, that establishment anymore.
And that's why the key word I said there is that, or the key phrase I said is people that you trust, that are not going to intentionally hurt you. You don't just choose someone because you talk to them once a month or once a week, or whatever, but it's going to be your very closest. It may be one, it may be two, probably nobody has more than 3 friends that close that they should allow into that realm, to give them access to that, essentially. So, and on the grand scheme of things, what he's saying is that if anyone comes to you that is not in that tight circle,
then you don't hold on to it.
You don't hold on to it.
You don't hold on to that hurt. You let it go.
And so with that being said, we're talking about close friendships, relationships, marriages. If you are able to trust someone that much, and I think that was one of the things that we talked about was trusting, you had mentioned earlier.
And I think what you were going into, and I wrote this note down, and a lot of people talk about this topic, and there's lots of articles around it, lots of great articles around it, but emotional intelligence is having emotional intelligence. And that ability to really navigate those spaces and places, knowing what things to hold on to and what things to let go, and also being that emotionally safe person, being a safe, that I can come to you and vent. And I know you're going to hear me and just listen to me. And you might be thinking in your head, you're crazy as all get out. Like,
I think that a lot.
I know you do. 100%. You just hurt me, and I just allowed you to hurt me. I think this is a toxic relationship.
Yes, it is.
Anyways, so like emotional intelligence, and it's being able to have that and supporting that emotional intelligence in a workplace, in a work environment, and in a friendship. And supporting your friend, knowing that they are a safe space, that your friends know more about you than you probably want the rest of the world to ever know.
Yeah.
You know more about me and all my quirks and oddities than I want the rest of the world to know, right?
So that's why we started podcast, so we can share all of this.
So that's another key that you would say, that if a friendship was just surviving, but when you really just stop sharing about who you are as a person, and when you feel like you can no longer, if you don't like share the randomness in your life and world, then maybe your friendship is just surviving.
Yeah. So one thing that I wrote down, because I like to joke and I can be rough and gruff, is that knowing your friend, knowing the other person in this friendship or relationship, and knowing our differences. So I'm very rough and gruff. I'm a lot of times just straight to the point, fact, and then I like to tease a lot as well. I love to laugh. Probably a defense mechanism. I don't like serious conversations, but anyway.
Compliments, serious conversations.
Yeah. So, but knowing you and knowing my wife, here's one.
Did you just compare me to your wife?
No. My wife absolutely hates to be scared. I love to scare people.
Let's talk about that. Let's pause. Let us pause for a second.
I love to scare people.
Yes, and I was traumatized for years and had twitches. I had twitches from you scaring me so many times.
I know. And so I finally had to cut that out quite a bit. I like to scare the kids now, but with Amanda, very, very rarely do I ever get away with scaring her. Very rarely do I try it, but yeah, that's so knowing your friend, and knowing how to handle your friend, and we're talking about confrontation, knowing what is an acceptable manner of confrontation of an argument, knowing what you can generally.
Where's the line? Sorry.
Where's the line? Yeah, no, you're good. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like a trigger point. You generally know those trigger points when you've been in a friendship as long as we have, and avoiding those. You can have arguments and discussions without hurting and without getting to those trigger points, and you can have resolutions without that. So I'm very rough and gruff. I'm very, but I know whenever, and I like to tease, but I know whenever we're having a serious discussion or an argument, that I have to keep that in check.
Yeah.
So.
Anyway. And in a thriving friendship, you understand when a friend is truly bringing something to the table that is that they need your emotional support, right? All of those things are really fundamental for a thriving friendship and relationship. Because if it's just surviving, then you don't have that safety net, you don't have that security, you don't have that trust, you don't have those conflicts, you don't have any of that. And then your friendship truly is just surviving, and friendships are important. They are super important. That your friends are who you surround yourself with, that makes you as a person. They have a huge impact on your life.
So two things came to my mind whenever you were saying that. And the first one is that through our business, we help a lot of people that need second chances. And usually one of the first questions whenever I have some one-on-one time with them, usually one of the first questions I ask is, how is your support group? What does it consist of? Do you have that family? Do you have that church? Do you have those friends that are there that have your best interest in mind and that want you to succeed? And that's very important, having that support group. The second thing that came to my mind was whenever in November of 2021, and I had a major stroke. I had two strokes, a small one, and then I had a major stroke, and I was in the ICU and I was in rehab, and it was a very traumatic experience. And thankfully, thank God, I made almost a complete recovery. It's been miracles. Really, it's been miracles. But during that time, I had a tremendous support group of friends. We had the church. Our pastor was there. Our assistant pastor, your dad, was there with us a lot throughout it. And then my wife and you and Josh were there as much as you could be. And I'll say, like, whenever, and I'm trying not to get too emotional here, but whenever you are sitting in a place like that and you can't walk and you can't, and this hand did not work, and we were sitting there playing the game Sorry or Trouble, whatever it was, and Jared and Josh were making, and Amanda, they would make me use my left hand to move these stupid little pieces that I could not move. And the frustration with that, but the care that you guys had and the genuine, love that I felt throughout that.
I'm glad you felt it.
Just a little bit. But there goes what I just
talked about. A serious moment.
But having that support, having friends like that is so important. And cultivating those friendships. I don't know if I would have been for the first however many years before that I knew you and Josh. If we had not cultivated good friendships there, and if I had been rough and gruff and always, not really caring what you guys think and this, just going on my own way, had I done that, I very seriously doubt anybody would have been there. I'd probably been in that room by myself. But we had cultivated a great friendship, in that time.
I think it's important. I think people have to look at, if you don't have thriving friendships, I think you have to look and you have to say, why have I surrounded myself with individuals who don't have that capability or that skill set? Or is there something about me that is holding out people who would be my friend, but maybe something from your past, something's preventing you from having that thriving friendship and just having that surface level, that surviving friendship. Because in times of need, and during that time, I didn't realize like how tight our friendship was until like that started. And I'll never forget that night of your stroke, and not to like relive all of that, but I'll never forget. And I literally was driving out of your subdivision, and like it hit me that I was getting ready to lose my best friend. And like I fell to pieces. I fell to pieces. And you also don't realize the importance of people until you go through those hard times. Yeah. And it was not hard for me to spend the night at the rehab center. It was not hard for me to come visit. It was not, you know what I'm saying? Because I think we had both invested.
Yeah.
We had both invested in something that was mutually beneficial, and it wasn't difficult. Like it didn't make it wasn't an option. Like, there's nothing was an option. But I think, and it probably, our friendship and our relationship has probably not always been like that. It goes through phases and times and pieces and whatever, things happen in life. But yeah, I think it's important to keep it thriving. 4 times just like that. And it's not that you just want your friends, like when you go through those hard times, like to be there, but I mean, you do.
Yeah.
And that's not the only reason you want a thriving friendship, because you're a happier person. When your friendships are thriving, or your relationships or your connections are thriving, you are a happier person. I will never forget, like, when several people that I knew and that I had like very close connections with in the Evansville area, who we would talk all early childhood stuff, and we would just like, I mean, you could see the zings every conversation we had. I'll never forget, like, when they all moved away, and they all pretty much did around the same time. And for me, that was like, that was a gut punch. Like, you don't realize how much people impact your world and life. And so we still keep in touch to this day, but it's important. And I didn't realize, like, for my mind, for my well-being, for my emotional well-being, I didn't realize how important that was to me. Right. And just like I said about our friendship, I didn't realize, like, even how important it was to me until the moment I thought it was going to be gone.
Yeah.
And then it came crashing into perspective.
Yeah.
But you're here today, so.
Yeah. Unfortunately, sometimes it does take moments like that, moments of tragedy, to really make us understand how much people mean to us.
Yeah.
I think everyone at times will find themselves surviving. And
absolutely. You go through phases in life where
it takes having it on your mind. It takes
being cognizant about it, being very conscious.
Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. Yeah.
Awareness.
Yes, being aware of it, being aware of where you are in your relationships and your friendships, and taking the time to make them work.
I just spit out another word, and we don't have time to talk about it, but
next time, part 2.
Yeah, part 2, attunement to your, and we sort of touched on it, but being having attunement, being connected, very well aware of the person who you are friends with. We say this in early childhood and education all the time, that it's so important, but it also is for a thriving relationship. Because if you are not attuned, if you are zero oblivious to emotions, feelings when you encounter people or your friend, you're surviving, right? And it could be that maybe both of you are going through like a really hard time and can't see beyond what's happening right here. But like that attunement is a key for thriving friendships.
All
right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We need to tackle some of the previous podcasts and maybe go more in depth and maybe clean up this one a little bit more too. And really, we could talk about the keys in that. I don't know.
And we've also discussed having some guests on here.
Absolutely.
And we'd have to change our setup a little bit, but we have some people in mind. We might be traveling. I think, is that next year?
I don't know. We're gonna see.
Traveling next year. Take it on the road.
Take it on the road, and we'll have more of a refined topic and more notes put together. But possibly doing a live session, live presentation. We've got that in the works, so we're kind of excited about that.
Very excited about that.
Yep. It will be more refined than our just off the cuff.
By then we might have 5 subscribers. I think we're at 4 right now.
And it won't be all myself watching videos over and over.
Thank you all so much for tuning in. We appreciate it. Make sure you like and share, follow, subscribe, whatever it is. And thank you very much.
All right.
Have a good day.